Welcome to the NWO Sports Podcast. Here's your host, Logan Bailey.
Welcome to the NWO Sports Podcast, brought to you by our primary sponsor, 3Chord. I'm your host, Logan Bailey, and joined again today on the show by Keith Brown, AJ Fairchild, and Tony Fairchild. So, guys, week 1 is in the books. Week 2 is among us. What are you guys' thoughts going into this week?
I don't know. It was exciting to get started again, and had a beautiful night for football last Friday night. So hopefully this Friday night it's not too hot, and we have another good weekend.
I was gonna say different story this week. Last week we were talking about wearing sweatshirt and fall weather. Lows of 50s. This week it's supposed to be. Someone was saying, I think on Thursday, the hottest day of the year at like heat index of 105. So. I don't know.
That's too hot to play football. All I can say is drink water.
Yeah, drink a lot of it.
Keith, AJ, you got any thoughts going into this week?
No, just watching a lot of football last week here with the Thursday night game and Friday night game. It was awesome getting to watch Defiance play and then turn around and watch Napoleon play. So just getting to enjoy some football again.
Yep, it was perfect. Thursday and Friday, both nights were, for this time of year, just ideal conditions.
Yeah, it was awesome. Going to watch the Napoleon game. That's the first time I've ever been to Defiance.
So that was a lot of fun. We'll kind of get into that too, but yeah, we all went to the Defiance Napoleon game, and obviously we were at the Tenora game. But the atmosphere was awesome. We got some good footage, and we had some good conversations on the sideline, so that was awesome. Overall, great venue to have football games too. Yeah. So, a big thing this week, going to be the heat. Fun little tidbit I kind of saw, I think it was on X now. It's not Twitter anymore, but I didn't realize that, there are like actual regulations in for, when the heat index starts, I think at 95, there's all kinds of regulations that the state implements. And if the heat index is over 104 for the day, there's no outdoor activity allowed. So I thought that was kind of interesting thing that I read. So,
wow.
Well, let's go ahead. Let's look at how we did last week for our picks. And Keith, you were 15-1, so I'll give you your little moment of fame. What do you have to say?
Boy. Yeah, a couple of them I took a chance and came out, one I know was Evergreen for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I was just going off like what we saw in the scrimmage versus Elmwood the week before, and then you saw Evergreen have a little bit of talent coming back, and like, hey, Elmwood didn't look the crispest by any means against the Tenora's number ones. And like I said, with Evergreen, having a few skilled position players and a lot of talent coming back, I took a chance, and really wasn't even a close game. So
no, you hit that one right on the money. And following up picks, myself, AJ, and Tony were all tied 13-3. Matthew was 12-4, and Bryce was in a familiar place. Unfortunately, he was at 11-5. So I think he was
Joker hat.
Yeah, he was right in that bus all the year last year. So
what we ought to do is like whoever finishes last for the week ought to have to wear a hat or something goofy in here.
Yeah, some kind of punishment like you do in fantasy leagues. Yes. Well, let's go ahead. Let's get into some game recaps here from week 1. So we're going to start with the NWO Sports game of the week last week that we were at. Looking at Napoleon at Defiance. Defiance ended up winning that game 38-13. You look at some things. Napoleon was actually up at half, 7-0. And another fun fact is Coach Cooper is now 3-0 versus Napoleon to start his Defiance career. So very impressive from them. Looking at some top players of note from Defiance, he had running back Brogan Castillo, 26 carries, 146 rushing yards. That's 5.61 yards a carry, 3 rushing touchdowns. Wide receiver, running back Anthony Wilder, 5 carries, 27 rushing yards, 1 punt return for a touchdown. We saw him struggle with some receptions, had some issues early on, but really that punt return kind of created a spark for Defiance in the second half. So that was absolutely huge. And one other player I really wanted to note, and I'm going to throw in a highlight from this kid because he played phenomenal, is defensive back Garrett Rodenberger. He also had an interception late in the second half that kind of sealed the deal and really set the tone for the Defiance Bulldogs. But he played lockdown defense. He had a few huge hits, and I'll attach into the podcast the actual hit because it was such a good hit. You could hear it from on the microphone. So that was very impressive from Garrett Rodenberger. And then looking at Napoleon's, someone who really stuck out was wide receiver Trey Rubenstein. He had finished with 9 receptions, 138 receiving yards, and 1 receiving touchdown. And I kid you not, I think he had like 6 receptions at halftime. I said he's on pace maybe to set a single game record for Napoleon because they were just throwing the ball to Trey Rubenstein. So what were your guys' thoughts on this Napoleon at Defiance game?
It was an awesome game to be at. Like you said, it was 7-0 at halftime, and you're kind of like, whoa. We were all standing there kind of shocked a little bit, I think, and like this wasn't the way we thought this was going to go. And Defiance made some adjustments at halftime and came out, and Napoleon unfortunately turned the ball over and that kind of set the tone. And I think we were talking to Garrett Mansfield, and it was like literally about maybe a period of 10 plays, and the game was completely reversed. It was 24-7. So yeah, it was just kind of an awesome game to be at.
Yeah, I thought it was kind of funny too. You said Defiance making halftime adjustments, and I hear a lot of things through the grapevine, and hearing from some of the kids, I was like, so what did Coach Cooper talk to you guys about? He said, really, he didn't say much at halftime, and they just kind of came out, and I mean, it was a totally different team that second half.
Yeah, their offensive production in that first half was very, very minimal. So whatever happened, whatever spark got lit underneath them coming out of halftime was apparently what they needed. Now, granted, Napoleon kind of shot themselves in the foot a little bit with, I think, 3, maybe 4 turnovers kind of in a row there. Yeah. So that pretty much set Defiance up for success. Now, Defiance had to capitalize, which they did. So it shows that they had that bite in them coming out of halftime. So Defiance definitely has some area to work on. You don't want to come out of the gates cold like that. You're going to set yourself behind right off the start, but good recovery. Napoleon, kind of the opposite, started off very hot, and then whatever happened coming out of halftime, they were just struggling to move the ball.
Yeah, a couple of bulletin points for me was early on, Trey Rubenstein actually had 2 amazing catches literally right in front of us. Right at the goal line. Then his touchdown catch was kind of ones you see on Sports Center, honestly.
Yeah.
Anthony Wilder, I think his punt return pretty much was the igniter that Defiance needed, because I think it was probably under 4 minutes in the third quarter, Napoleon still had that 7-0 lead. And like Logan said, we was talking to Garrett, and next thing you know, turnover, fumble, touchdown. And it was 24-7, I think, within a span of 3 minutes. Just like exploded.
Yeah, I think did Napoleon fumbled a kickoff or a punt or something right there?
First play after the punt return, I think they fumbled. Defiance scored. I think that's when Rodenberger intercepted, I believe, and returned it to about the 3 or 4.
One of those, and then the punt return on top of that. Yeah. So yeah, it just kind of snowballed out of control for Napoleon.
It was just
real quick.
3 minutes, 10 plays, and the game went from 7-0 to way out of reach. So
yeah, I felt like it was one of those things. We were there, and you could feel the whole shift of momentum. It was just like a wave that was coming in, and it was all towards favoring Defiance. So. Yeah. Overall, I thought it was a pretty good game. It was exciting to see such like a crowd like that, and then the environment. So that's probably, it's got to be one of the best rivalries in this area for sure.
Yep. And the Thursday night thing made it cool because more people come out. We saw a lot of other teams there. Liberty Center kids were there, and Sonora kids were there. So it was neat to see different people come out and watch it.
Yeah, they did a really nice job at making it like a true event. They had food trucks there, and they really tried to bring people in, before the game, and I thought that was pretty awesome. And just to see the amount of people, and I think they had cars parking way out in the grass, and I think Miles Holliday even put a picture on too, and I was like, wow, it really puts into perspective on how many people are here. So
yeah, Coach Beauty does a great job with Defiance. I mean, there's nobody better in the area.
All right, let's go ahead. Let's move on to the next game here. This was our NWO Sports Game of the Week, and we covered this one Friday, and that was Liberty Center at Sonora. Liberty Center ended up winning that game 35-14, and looking at some highlights here, Liberty Center scored 27 unanswered points going into second half. Actually, the halftime score was 14-15 with a Liberty Center lead, which we said, looking at things, that was kind of crazy to see. Both teams really dogging it out in the first half. Liberty Center had 6 fumbles during the game with 2 lost. Most of the fumbles were on the snap, and turnover battle was 2-2. Looking at some top players of note, Liberty Center running back Colton Cruz, he had 12 carries, 79 rushing yards, 6.6 yards a carry, and 1 rushing touchdown. Trenton Cruz, running back, 8 carries, 66 rushing yards, 8.3 yards a carry, 2 rushing touchdowns. And then you had defensive backs, Landon Cruz and defensive back Cam Colley, both had 1 interception apiece. And then looking at Sonora, and we'll kind of get into some things more. We had quarterback Dominic Graziani. I think one thing to really point out is we saw the good, I think the bad and the ugly. But Graziani, and we'll kind of get into it here too. He started off the game really well. We saw he was making throws. He hit Owen Ackerman over top. He burnt one of the Liberty Center defensive backs to early on along the sideline. Impressive. I think it was like a 43-yard gain or something like that. Really on top of things. And then we saw, kind of leading into the second half, some decision makings I think were struggling, but we talked, I think he's going to have to grow in his decision making. And then we saw kind of the ugly towards the end when it was almost desperation and just throwing everything downfield. So I think that's one thing. I think Dominic, he's got the potential. We know that he's got a cannon for an arm, but I think we'll kind of see that decision making and that real quarterback mindset kind of develop as the year goes on. And we can kind of discuss this later. And then one other person I wanted to make note, running back Grady Gusweiler. He had 12 carries, 28 rushing yards. He had 2 rushing touchdowns, and he also had 2 receptions for 23 receiving yards. So we were all at this game, so who wants to kick it off?
Go ahead, Keith. I'll let you go first.
Boy. It started off with a bang for Liberty Center when Grady Miller, quarterback for Liberty Center, 65-yard touchdown pass right over the middle. Basically nobody within 5-6 yards of him. And Rams played decent through the first quarter, almost midway through the second quarter, close to the half. Actually had that 14-8 lead. They were driving. I had the ball, I believe, inside the Liberty Center 30-yard line. Actually, we talked about it. Hey, if Tenor can go in and score, you're going to get the ball back to start the second half. This is looking, pretty good. And then turnover was an interception, I believe. And then after that, typical Liberty Center, Coach Moeller, I think he actually went less shotgun and then just put the quarterback under center the rest of the game. And that actually was very effective. Cruz Brothers just pounded the ball. Liberty Center just marched the ball down, poked it in with about a minute and a half to go, I think, and a half. And second half,
I was true Liberty Center ball.
Absolutely.
I mean, I think they started off, Tenora, I don't remember if they punted it away or whatever, because they got the possession, but 8-minute drive, just Liberty Center pounding it down your throat, running the rock right up the middle. It was just, it took the life out of Tenora.
Yeah, Coach Becker and staff, that was our first game, really under the lights. So we'll give them a little bit of a pass. But as we talked about, it was like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde again. With Graziani, looked great in the first half, almost like, which I think we talked about, was like watching the Elmwood game last year all over again in the second half.
Yep, that's absolutely what it was like.
You can't make up 21 points with one throw. You just have to take what the defense give you, which Dominic, honestly, next to Ultimus, is probably the second most talented quarterback in the GMC. Just need a little better decision making. Instead of trying to throw that ball through a brick wall, instead just throw it to the coaches on the sideline and just come back with third down.
Yeah, there was a couple times he did that.
AJ, you have any comments?
Just the fact that it was 2 totally different teams we saw from Tenora was kind of staggering a little bit. They came out and looked very, very solid in the first half, and then second half, totally different. Didn't look like they knew what they were doing on offense, defense, nothing. They were just kind of all over the place. I don't know if it's because everybody's kind of new, learning a new coaching scheme or what it was, but they definitely came away with some good points. They had a proof of concept in that first half with the new offense that looked very good.
Yep.
They're going to have to dial some things in coming into week 2, and it sounds like might have some injuries already this year, which is going to hurt them quite drastically. Hopefully they're able to fill those gaps, but you're losing some pretty solid players. So, wish the best to those guys. Hope for a speedy recovery, but they're going to go into Otsego, and that's going to be an onslaught too. So we keep talking about Tenora's got 3 games in a row here that are just going to keep pounding them. So they're going to have to figure something out.
Yeah, I think on the flip side, too, if you look at it, Liberty Center was really shooting themselves in the foot in that first half. The ball was on the ground, I felt like, a majority of the time. And a lot of it was the snaps. I think they had a couple on punts, and then definitely center and quarterback exchange as well. I think they cleaned that up. You have a new quarterback back there. You don't have Zane Zider anymore, so they're still working things out in a first-year starter. But I think they cleaned stuff up. And I think they'll be in good shape coming to Napoleon this week. Yeah. So,
one quick note that I have is, we know Coach Becker, the new staff and the new offense they've put in, but they did not pound the rock, not at all. I mean, I don't know what their total stats was. I'm just curious. Let me go check. I know it wasn't very much.
Yeah, offensive yardage, you look, Liberty Center had 313. Tenora finished with 171.
Yeah, Tenora had 43 rushing yards on 28 attempts. I mean, so you're not moving the ball. And we know they're not big up front, so we knew that was going to be a challenge for them against Liberty Center. We knew that. But, you can't put all that pressure on Dominic Graziani to do all that work. They've got to be able to get the running game established somehow. And with some of the injuries that we've heard about, it might be tough going for the next couple of weeks here. So we'll see what happens, but they've definitely got some work to do, as AJ said.
Yeah, I like that point you made too. I mean, if you're in a quarterback's position, like how much stress does that alleviate from you if you know you have something else to revert to? You're not solely relying, okay, we really got to push the ball here because we're down some points. Yep. We can't get a run game going, so we really have to chuck this thing up and try to get it. So I mean, I think that may, like, if Sonora is developing a run game, and not even saying they don't even have to go out there and rush for 300 yards a game, but if you can run the ball for 100 yards and take some of that pressure off, I think that will help with the passing game, because we know Tenora's got athletes all over the field. So yeah,
and if nothing else, you have to establish that run pass game. You got to do pull the Tom Brady and go for the 3, 4, 5 yards at a time. I mean, that's what Tom Brady does the best. He just always underneath getting 3, 4, 5 yards each time. And and that was the one thing we talked about what Graziani just didn't do. He kept kind of pushed the ball down the field and a lot of times throwing into double or triple coverage. So again, like some reads, but Dominic will get better. But, Tenora's going to have to establish some sort of run game.
Yeah, but I mean, like we talked about during the game, even probably during the podcast last week, you lost your top 4 running backs.
Right.
I mean, literally you had nobody other than Grady coming back that had any carries last year.
Right.
So it's a little obstacle, and Coach Becker, hopefully, I mean, he'll have the boys ready. So.
And my final thoughts for Liberty Center were, you look at things starting out for Liberty Center, their defensive backs got burnt quite a bit to start the game off. They run real tight man-to-man coverage. And, after that, you go into the second half, they were pretty locked down. I mean, they didn't let anything up, and guys were all over the field. So kudos to the Liberty Center secondary for really stepping up in that second half of that game. So let's go ahead. Let's move on to the next game here. Looking at Eden at Edgerton, looking at the Route 49 rivalry, and Eden ended up winning that game 28-26. Coming into that game, Edgerton has won 8 of the last 9 matchups. And I tell you what, linebacker Cohen Holbert of Eden, he made 2 huge plays to help Eden win. Yep. And that was actually one of Matthew's breakout defensive players of the week from last week. So he hit that one. He was 100% correct. Just a couple of the plays here. Edgerton was inside their own 10-yard line. They had 4 minutes to go, and the game was tied 20-20. And Cohen Holbert caused a fumble on a big hit, and Eden ended up recovering, which sparked a drive. And, he ended up having a 17-yard rushing touchdown. He had a couple broken tackles to put Eden up 6 with a minute left to go. So very impressive from him. Looking at a couple other top players, quarterback Kyler Sapp was 34 of 55, 355 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns. He did have a pick. He also had 79 rushing yards on the ground. And then looking at Edgerton, Scotty Krantz, 15 carries, 76 rushing yards. He had 8 receptions, 255 receiving yards, so quite a few receiving yards from him. And he had 1 receiving touchdown, 2 rushing touchdowns. And then their quarterback, Maddox Baker, he was 11 of 16, good for 69%, 273 passing yards and 1 passing touchdown. And linebacker Joel Walkup, which we've kind of talked about him before, he's one of the stud linebackers in the GMC. He finished with 11 tackles and half a sack. And then the last kid, Sean Murphy, finished with a tackle and 3 sacks. So thoughts on this rivalry game here?
I kind of expected that game to be a tough one, and kind of played out. It sounds like it played out that way. But, when you look at Kyler Sapp throwing up 355 yards, I guess that wasn't too, super, I mean, I'm not super impressed. I am super impressed they threw 355 yards, but, we kind of talked about Edgerton losing some starters, and that could have hurt them. And then, of course, you got Kyler Sapp and Coach Olin's offense. They're going to throw the rock around, and he was able to obviously find some people open.
AJ, Keith? Go ahead.
Yeah, honestly, to me personally, this game was much closer than I thought it was going to be, because Eden, anytime you have a quality quarterback coming back like Sapp, and then Edgerton basically did lose most of their offense and defensive key position players, kind of thought, honestly, Eden would run away with this. So Coach Flagel obviously had his boys ready to play young team at Edgerton. And as Tony said, looking at the stats, Maddox Baker, 273 yards for Edgerton, very impressive. But I actually saw that hit that Cohen had.
Did you really?
One of those, like, NFL Films hits where he comes from the right to the left and hits the ball carrier, and the ball just goes flying about 7 to 10 yards sideways. He just, whoever that running back was for Edgerton, just got murdered. So it was a heck of a hit by Cohen. But yeah, to me personally, it was not like an exciting game, but it was a little closer than honestly I thought it would be. So.
And we kind of talked too with rivalry games. I feel like sometimes you can throw everything out the door because neither team cares and they just want to go out there and win this ball game because they take a lot of pride in that. So we kind of talked about that in the Defiance Napoleon game. I think you look at paper, Defiance was definitely the favorite with everyone that they brought back. But again, like Napoleon came out of the gates really well. So you never know what you're going to get in rivalry games.
Yeah, just it's pretty cool to see Matthew get the one right off the bat.
That's what I was thinking. Yep.
First defensive player breakout of the week or whatever it was that gets it right away. The one thing with Edgerton, though, that does kind of solidify the fact that they might be a little bit dangerous in the GMC, putting up numbers like that on the offense. They might be able to get some damage done. So definitely keep an eye out for them.
All right, let's move on to the next game here. Looking at Columbus Grove at Pandora Gilboa, another rivalry game. This was played on Thursday as well, and Pandora Gilboa won on a last-second 15-yard passing touchdown. They ended up winning that one 25-22. Grove was down actually 0-13 at half, which I don't think that's a position, Grove's used to. Last year making it to the state semifinals against Marion Local and all the success that they've had over there. And you look at the turnover battle, Pandora Gilboa had 2 turnovers and Columbus Grove had 0. So, we talk about the turnover battle a lot, and usually the team that wins that is the one that wins the ball game.
Right.
Not in this case, so a little bit different. Looking at top players from Columbus Grove, quarterback Landon Best was 7-13, 54%, 46 passing yards, 17 carries, 85 rushing yards, and 1 rushing touchdown. And running back Trenton Barraza had 11 carries, 70 rushing yards, which I thought that was kind of crazy because he was one of the top rushers in the area. And, I'm not saying that's a bad game, but you thought, maybe he'd get some more carries and stuff too. So what are you guys' thoughts on this one?
Yeah, that was the first thing I looked at, Logan. When I pulled up the stats, there was Barraza only having 11 carries. You think they would have just handed him the ball and fed him all night long, but either they did a nice job of shutting him down, or maybe he got dinged up. I'm not sure, but again, like 70 yards, that's a good outing. It's just not the typical outing we see from him.
Keith, AJ,
I think it kind of shocked us all a little bit. We all kind of picked Columbus Grove, so it does sound like they do have some power with their offense, be able to come back from a 0-13 deficit. Unfortunately, we're not able to come away with it.
Yeah, you don't ever see Coach Schaefer being scoreless at the half, hardly ever. So it's either a great defensive game by Pandora Gilboa or Columbus Grove really not ready, which I can't see out of Coach Schaefer. They had a lot of losses on offense too. So
yeah,
that was. And anytime you lose quality players like Columbus Grove did, your first game is going to be a little rough. So.
Yeah, graduation hit Columbus Grove pretty hard. And I believe I read an article, and I think it was in Lynn's Black Swamp football magazine. He said something about how, this is the first time he's had to truly find some linebackers. Yep. And we talk about that linebacker core was probably the best in Northwest Ohio last year. And, he had 2 of them that were all Ohio players. So definitely... green on the offensive and defensive sides of the ball. So I think they'll bounce back. Coach Schaefer knows how to run a good program over there. So
absolutely.
I don't think there's any worry going forward.
One of the best in the area. So Columbus Grove will be fine.
All right. Let's look at the next game here. Looking at Fort Recovery at Wayne Trace. Wayne Trace ended up winning this game 32-30. And, we talked about Wayne Trace this year. Something they needed to improve on was offense. And what did they do? They went out and had 349 yards of offense. So I thought that was impressive, and that really shined right away. They averaged 4.8 yards a carry for the run game, which that was also something we kind of talked about. If Wayne Trace wants to be a legit team, they got to really kind of develop things, and they got to run the rock a little bit. The turnover battle was 2-2. Looking at some top players, Wayne Trace, quarterback Kyle Stoller, he had himself quite the game. 14 of 24, 58%, 216 passing yards, 3 passing touchdowns. He did have an interception. He also had 8 carries for 49 rushing yards. And then running back Tucker Antone, 13 carries, 56 rushing yards, 4.3 yards a carry, 1 rushing and 1 receiving touchdown. So what were your guys' thoughts here?
Go ahead, AJ. You're on the Wayne Trace bandwagon.
Well, I was going to start off by saying that 349 yards of offense really shows that they're getting things started there. they're, like I said last week, they're one of those teams you really don't want to mess with in the GMC. You cannot overlook Wayne Trace, especially with that turnover battle that always inevitably happens with Wayne Trace. 4 turnovers in this game. I think last year we saw, 2, 3, 5 turnovers in a game. So you're going to continue to see that. Whatever they're teaching over there is going to continue to work. So don't overlook Wayne Trace.
No, not at all. Impressive, as Logan said. Kyle Stoller back as quarterback had a very solid game. And even more impressive, you look at, like Logan said, look at the rushing yards. To me, Stoller almost 50 yards rushing, and then Tucker Antone over 50 yards as well. So anytime you get the running game going, it can open up your passing game.
Yeah, that's something too. Whenever you make a deep playoff run, most of the teams that make it down to state, if they do run a spread offense, they end up running the rock because it's hard to catch a ball when it's snowy, rainy, and you're in early December because there's anything that can happen. So it's good to see Wayne Trace really develop that on their offense. And like AJ said too, I'm right with you. I think Wayne Trace can be a scary team this season. Yeah,
and we always talk about the crazy things that happened to Wayne Trace, but there was 4 turnovers. So between the two teams, there was 4 turnovers. So, but yeah, Wayne Trace is going to be a team that I'm going to call it out now, guys. I think the GMC is going to beat themselves up, and Antwerp's just going to kind of walk off in the sunset. I think you're going to see Wayne Trace knock off people. I think you're going to see Tenora knock off people. I think you're going to see people banging each other around, and Antwerp's just going to kind of quietly slide back in the shadows.
I can see that happening.
You're similar to last year, probably when the runner-up at GMC probably has 2 losses, honestly.
Right.
So.
Yep. Let's look at the next game. Speaking of the GMC, looking at Ayersville at Delta. Ayersville ended up winning this game 27-7. Looking at some top players or players to note. Running back Taryn Knieven, 28 carries, 145 rushing yards, 3 rushing touchdowns. Quarterback Lucas Fishbaugh, he went 2 for 7 passing. He had 14 passing yards. So I think we know where Ayersville is going to go with things on the offensive side of the ball. Delta quarterback Justin Ruppel, 4 for 10, 40% passing, 45 passing yards. He had a rushing touchdown along with 8 carries for 20 rushing yards. And then Carl Warner, he had 5 carries for 19 rushing yards, 3 receptions, and 40 receiving yards. So what are your guys' thoughts on the Pilots and the Delta Panthers?
Well, first off, Ayersville avenged its loss from last year.
Yeah, they did.
That was the number one thing. So they went to Delta and took it away from them this year. But, when you look at the game and you look at the stats as you read them off, Logan, boy, there wasn't a lot of excitement. They were just sitting there running the ball back and forth.
Running that rock. Yeah, no kidding.
It's probably a pretty quick game, too.
I would think. Yeah, it was probably they were probably at Drop Zone Pizzeria by about 8 o'clock.
Yeah. Listen to Coach Mickey during his coaches interviews ours, of course. Then I listened to him last night on Lynn's coach's show. I don't think you're going to see much throwing from Ayersville this season. He's pretty well open about that. He's pretty much going to be 80-20, 80 run, 20 pass. But yeah, listen to Coach Mickey again last night. Super, super funny, super nice guy. Be one of those coaches you'd want to play for. But as far as this game, really not a surprise. Even though Ayersville, again, lost some key talent at the skill position, a little wet behind the ears, but anytime you can just run the ball, you're, hopefully come on top. But their offensive line was experienced coming back.
Yep.
So that's the whole key right there.
And we know with Delta, they lose running back Jeremiah Wolford. Yep. He was one of the top running backs at NWO. I think he was a first teamer too. And Delta graduation hit Delta very hard as well. Yep. So.
When it comes to Ayersville, the one name that I don't see on here that we talked about was Abe Delaney.
I was just getting ready to touch on that.
Not on there.
I was going to say, I think if you're Ayersville, though, you have a really talented athlete like Delano. I think you got to do something to get the ball in his hands. Like if you're not going to pass the ball, line him up in the backfield, or if you can throw him out, hit him in the flats or get him running out of the backfield and something. Right. But, when you have a lot of talent like that, use it to your advantage. So I think I'd really like to see Ayersville do that. Yep. And I think that would really help with their success going forward. But yeah, you read my mind. I was getting ready to talk on that. We talked about that for like the preseason show. Yep. And he was a name that came to mind. So
yeah, it was the same thing that we taled about. We were on the sideline there at the Napoleon game. You got somebody like Rubenstein, such an athlete, and you're trying to get him the ball, and they got him the ball 9 times. And like Keith said, made some great plays, but you got to find a way to get your athletes more touches. If he's going to be an impact player, they got to be touching the ball.
All right, let's move on to the next game here. Looking at Fairview at Wauseon. Wauseon ended up winning this game 49-12. Looking at some top players, Wauseon quarterback Trey Parsons was 10 of 13, 77%, 212 passing yards, 3 passing touchdowns. And Wasion ran the ball a fair amount this game, too. Running back Ryan Friend, 13 carries, 113 rushing yards, good for 8.7 yards a carry, 1 rushing touchdown. Running back Austin Kovar had 3 rushing touchdowns, and wide receiver Tyson Rodriguez, 4 receptions, 74 receiving yards. Looking at Fairview, quarterback William Zedike was 13 of 24, 54%. He had 75 passing yards, 1 passing touchdown. He did have an interception. He also had 9 carries for 26 rushing yards. And then wide receiver Logan Olinger led the team in receptions with 4, 17 receiving yards, and 1 receiving touchdown. So thoughts on this game here?
This game kind of, it's worse than it looks, even because Wasion was up 49-0 at halftime. And so the 6 points probably came more from the JV or the little less experienced players from Wasion. I can't say I'm really surprised with Wasion being as good as they always are, and Fairview being another team that's facing a new program again. It's going to take Fairview a little bit of time to kind of rebuild and get going again.
Yeah, for Wasion, looking at their side of the ball, use your first half to establish your running game, which they literally have not for the last, not that they haven't tried to establish it, they just had no success running it in the last couple of years. So Coach Moore looked like he used the first half to establish Friend. Great game by Parsons. And again, anytime you have Tyson Rodriguez out there as well, is going to definitely be a benefit. Other side of the ball, Coach Rakes, probably even expressed it. It's going to be probably a long year that you're establishing your building blocks for the future. Yeah. So
it's one of those deals where you have to trust the process.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, yeah. You probably took it on the chin versus Wasion. Then week 2 coming up this week, I think they play Delta. So everything you've been preaching in your off-season training program through your scrimmages into week 1, now it comes week 2, and you actually look at it, and Fairview could be very competitive, if not pull out a win versus Delta here in week 2. So just Coach Rakes knows what he's doing, said this last week. Just be patient, and he will get Fairview back to where they were.
And it's one of the things. It's got to be tough on the athletes because you're not going to see the results right away, it's going to take some time to really get things back where they should be for the Apaches. And I was thinking too. You talked about running the ball. I'm trying to think who even. I think the last one was probably one of the Timbrook boys that ran the ball back in 2020 or so. I was trying to think running back from Fairview. Yeah. So
Timmy Timbrook, I think.
Yeah. So
well, I mean, Zedike, he's a sophomore, right?
Right.
Yeah. So so he's coming back. You got a new coach, got a new program, and you still got to I mean, he played last year, so don't get me wrong, he's not inexperienced, but he's still young. So Fairview's got some work to do. They're going to get a couple wins this year. I wouldn't be too shocked when they pull out a couple wins.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a young quarterback and you started last year as a freshman and you got Coach Rakes coming back to you as a sophomore, I am happy as can be. It's like quarterback for Coach Olin at Eden. So Coach Rakes and Zedike there. Yeah, if I'm William Zedike, I was happy as could be when I saw Coach Rakes coming back to my program, because I know my next 3 years are going to start to improve every single game. So
yeah, the amount of growth that a quarterback like that will see over the next two years, as the mind starts developing, he starts getting the decision making that you need to see as a quarterback. Where does the ball need to get to? That kind of stuff. Don't always be looking for the big ball or the big play. Knowing when things can develop, and that'll come with the next year to 2 years here as he gets older.
All right, let's go ahead. Let's look at the next game here. Looking at Swanton at Paulding. Paulding ended up winning this game 36-0. They won their first season opener for the first time in 3 years and first home win since 2020. Looking at top players, unfortunately, I got stats sent to me. For some reason, the picture was just blurry. So I know they had a couple good kids that were really balling out for them. I know Jacob Fife and Kobe Four were a couple. We'll give them shout outs. I'm sure this won't be the last time that they have some notable performances. But, we talked about it, guys. Similar with Wayne Trace, Paulding could be one of those teams. They're on the upcoming with Coach Jim Menzie. You look at what they did last year. They did some really good things. The kids are playing hard, and it really shows. This is, like I said, first season opener win for the first time in 3 years, first home win since 2020. So that's got to create some excitement for the Panthers.
Absolutely. Off to great start for your season, coming out going 1-0 for the first time in 3 years or so, 3-4 years. So good job, Paulding. Proud of you guys.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you see a GMC team win, you're happy for them, especially Paulding, who struggled the last 3, 4, 5, 6 years. And this goes back to what we've been preaching about, the coaching changes in the area the last couple of years. Coach Menzie last year was a struggle, and it's good to see him just break out here in week 1. Kind of goes back to last year, everything that he was preaching. Hey, we got to follow this, and it'll pay dividends later down the road. And you see, week 1, you open up with a 36-0 shutout. Oh, it was over Swanton, but anytime you can put up 36 points on offense and get a shutout, in week 1 especially, that's very impressive.
Yeah, and just happy for them after what they went through over the past year, and to come out and get a win week 1 is a good start, and keep rolling.
Yeah, and if you're on the flip side with Swanton and Coach Eric Keller, just got to keep grinding away. We know there are these teams in Northwest Ohio that they're really pushing. They're trying to get back to some success, some winning seasons, things like that. So if you're on Swanton, just keep grinding, and good things will come. I mean, it's going to take time. We talk with Fairview, and even Paulding is another program that I think is on the upcoming, but they're all kind of right in that boat.
Yeah, even up that way, you saw Maumee win for the first time in 3 years.
Yeah,
so it's right in their neighborhood.
Let's look at the next game here. Van Wert at Bryan. Van Wert won 47-21. The score was 20-14 in the third quarter, but Van Wert scored 20 straight points to end up winning 47-21. And looking at Bryan, top performers, quarterback Jace Kepler, 11-26, 42%, 103 passing yards. He had 14 carries for 102 rushing yards, 7.3 yards a carry with 2 rushing touchdowns. And running back Sam Harrell, 12 carries, 53 rushing yards, 4.4 yards a carry. He had 1 rushing touchdown, 3 receptions with 40 receiving yards. Looking at Van Wert, and this kind of surprised me. We talked about Brylan Parker. He was a running back last year, moving to quarterback. That's some pretty respectable stats. So, and we kind of knew that he was going to be a dual threat. He was 17-26 for 65% completion percentage, 217 passing yards, 4 passing touchdowns. He had 16 carries for 122 rushing yards, good for 7.63 yards a carry. Wide receiver Connor Campbell stood out with 7 receptions, 101 receiving yards, 2 receiving touchdowns. And defensive back Gage Steeman had 5 tackles. He had 2 picks, and he averaged 39.33 yards a punt, which that's pretty good for being high school football.
Yeah.
And the last kid, I don't know how I missed this looking at the stat line, but was Keldon Bill. He had 1 rushing touchdown, and then he had 2 kickoff return touchdowns, and he had 178 kickoff return yards.
Jeez.
And I feel like that kind of replaces Brylan Parker. Last year, he was kind of in that position. And fun fact, too, last year, Brylan Parker had a punt return for a touchdown, a kickoff return for a touchdown, and a rushing touchdown, all in the same game. So that was something pretty interesting. But now maybe Keldon Bill's kind of finishing.
He was close. He didn't get the punt.
Yeah, I know. He's pretty close. Maybe he's filling in that athletic position, being all over the field and on special teams making plays. So
he get the 3 touchdowns. So he's looking at Parker going, "Hey, I had 2 kickoff returns, pal."
Right. So what are you guys thinking here?
It was one of those, to me, we were kind of watching it a little bit, following it along as Keith's reading off the scores, and I thought Bryan was in it there. Then all of a sudden it was kind of like the Defiance Napoleon game. All of a sudden you look back and like, whoa, what happened? Just kind of took off on him.
Yeah, I going into this game, I had Bryan picked actually because I really thought they had a lot of momentum. The new stadium, I believe a lot of people were coming out to check everything out, and they had them. Basically, they were mano a mano going into halftime and third quarter, and they just couldn't get it done in the second half.
Well, we always talk about special teams too. 2 kickoff returns. That right there is a huge, a lot of damage to your defense. Your defense is doing a decent job stopping them. You kick it off and they run it back. It's like, what else can you do as a defense?
Right.
And then, flipping the field on, when you do have to punt, getting about 40 yards a punt, that's huge for high school football, because pinning them deep in their own territory, or at least, flipping the sides of the field, can be a massive advantage to your benefit.
And I agree so much with you on the special teams. It is absolutely demoralizing when someone has a kickoff return, a punt return. We saw that in Defiance game. The same thing here in the Van Wert game, because it is absolutely draining for the morale of the opposing team. It just takes the life out of you. So
especially the kickoff return, you score, you're like, all right, here we go.
Exactly.
They score, and you're like, well, guess we'll try that again.
Right. Yeah. Yep.
pretty sure that's talking to a couple people who are actually at that game. Number one, again, kudos to the Bryan community. They said that facility is amazing, and with the LED lighting when Bryan scores, kind of like we see around college football the last couple of years with the lights going up and down and everything, it was just fascinating. As far as the end game, I think that's exactly what happened. Bryan actually scored to take the lead midway through the third quarter, and then Keldon Bill just took it the other way, and then it was just the air went out of the balloon. So it's a huge momentum change right there. Place is going nuts. Hey, we got the lead. Kickoff, boom, and then all of a sudden Bryan, I guess, never recovered after that. So,
and just one quick point that we haven't really touched on much, but we talked about Bryan's facility. Van Wert is also, they've got brand new turf, and they're really investing in their field as well. So that's also a very cool stadium. So if you get a chance, really check out the Van Wert Cougars Stadium, because that's also a look stadium.
They almost look identical, just one's red and one's purple and yellow, red and black, purple and yellow, but
both very nice facilities. Yep. So let's move on to the next game here. Looking at Montpelier at Antwerp. Antwerp ended up winning that game 42-6, and Antwerp scored all 42 points in the first half. Looking at some key players from Antwerp, quarterback Carson Altimus, 14 of 16, 88%, 288 passing yards, 4 passing touchdowns, 3 carries, 40 rushing yards, 13.3 yards a carry, and he had 1 rushing touchdown with 5 total touchdowns for the game. And, that's Carson Altimus is no stranger to that stat line. Looking at wide receiver Landon Brewer, 6 receptions, 166 receiving yards, 3 receiving touchdowns. Same with Brewer. And then linebacker Cyrus Gale had 4 tackles and 1 interception. Looking at Montpelier, a couple key players. Quarterback Hayden Sharps, 8 of 19, 140 passing yards, 1 passing touchdown. He did have an interception, and he also had 20 rushing yards. Wide receiver Braden Brink, 1 reception, 55 receiving yards, and 1 receiving touchdown. And then they had Eli Fackler, 4 tackles, 2 sacks, 3 tackles for loss. So what are your guys' thoughts on the Montpelier at Antwerp game?
Kind of what we expected, I think. I mean, just Antwerp's they just bring back too much talent this year. I just think they're going to be the team to beat in the area. I mean, I really do. It just Altimus, I'm sure that was probably maybe 1 series into the second half. I'm guessing they threw up 42 points in the first half, so I'm assuming he probably didn't play much in the second half, if any at all.
Right.
So I mean, some amazing stats. Again, they're going to be the tough team to beat.
One thing that kind of catches my eye is that Altimus was 14 of 16, but only 6 of those were completed to Landon Brewer. So that means they're getting the ball into other people's hands a little bit, which is going to take some of the pressure off of Landon Brewer. And if they can continue to do that against the bigger and tougher teams, that's going to be fantastic for Antwerp. Anytime you can establish more than just a 1 receiver or 1 running back, you start to diversify your offense a little bit. It takes the pressure off of that quarterback and that receiver, and it's just going to set them up for success.
And we know coming into this year, Antwerp is probably one of the most complete, and you look at depth too, probably one of the most deep teams in the area. They only graduated a couple seniors last season, so they bring back everyone and they're reloaded, and they're going to be hard to beat this year.
And this is one of those classes, if you're a head coach, you dream about. And if you're Coach Hale, just going into this game, you can only hope that you exit the game with no to minimal injuries. You got a decent game coming up this week versus Eden, which you should win. But you're hoping to get to the Sonora game as healthy as you could be for week 4.
Yep. Yeah, very well said. Let's look at a few more games here. Archbold at Genoa. Archbold ended up winning that game 24-14. Genoa was actually 0 for 4 on 4th down conversions, all in Archbold territory. Archbold started off the game down 7-0 and followed with 24 unanswered points. Looking at some top players from Archbold, quarterback Cade Brenner, 22 of 30, 73% completion percentage. He had 241 passing yards, and he did have 1 interception. Running back Lucas Dominic, 15 carries, 87 rushing yards, 4 receptions, 79 receiving yards. And then wide receiver Chase Miller had 7 receptions, 75 receiving yards. So what are you guys thinking about this game here?
Archbold's they're a big team. We talked about how many players they have on their team, so it doesn't surprise me that they can go down and play against a team like Genoa. But just kind of seeing the stat there, Genoa was 0 for 4 on 4th down while they're in Archbold territory. It's this kind of one of those things. What are you doing?
Right.
So maybe I don't know when those all took place. Maybe they were all in the 4th quarter, but yeah, it's just a kind of a weird stat.
I don't really have a whole lot else to say. Just that point there on the fourth down conversions, I'm kind of curious what their stats looked like on third down, whether it set them up to even be close, or if it was just kind of like we're in their territory, don't really want to punt, let's just throw the ball or run the ball and just get out of this series. It's kind of hard to tell.
Yeah, a very effective game by Brenner. Established the run, obviously, Dominic.
And that was a big question coming into this
absolutely.
year with Carson Dominic leaving. So
correct. And then huge game coming up this week. So looking forward to that one as well. Archibald, I should say. Yes.
Let's move on to the next one here. Patrick Henry at Hicksville. Patrick Henry ended up winning 39-0, and Patrick Henry held Hicksville to 21 rushing yards, was a key point in this game. Top players from Patrick Henry, and they have a list of them. Quarterback Nash Meyer had 9 completions for 221 passing yards and 3 passing touchdowns. Wide receiver Landon Johnson, 5 receptions, 141 receiving yards, 1 receiving touchdown. Running back Houston Miranda had a big game, and Coach I really talked about establishing the run this year. They're going to run the ball with a tight end too, which they kind of went away from last season. Houston Miranda had 17 rushes, 163 rushing yards, 9.6 yards a carry, and 2 rushing touchdowns, so nearly a first down every time he was carrying the ball. Hicksville wide receiver / quarterback Brant Langham had 5 receptions, 60 receiving yards, and a key point, he actually moved to quarterback mid-game. So I'm not sure if that was due to injury or just because he was a better fit. So what were you guys' thoughts here on the Patriots and Aces?
I just chuckling. As a wide receiver quarterback, I'm like, did he throw the ball to himself? I mean, what's going on there? But I thought that was kind of funny.
Oh, yeah, it's just like we said, like Coach Hale, if you're Coach I, you just want to come in to this game, play your best ball you possibly can, and get out with no injuries. But then again, like he said, he wanted to establish a run, and Houston Miranda, 17 rushes, 163 yards. Anytime you, in high school football, backyard football, you can carry the ball for a 10 yards or close to 10 yards per carry average, you're going to do some damage.
Yeah, and looking at Nash Meyer, he's obviously going to be somebody on our radar all year long.
Yep.
With the arm he's got and the offense that he's sitting in. It's going to be a little bit different this year with incorporating a little bit more of the rushing. But one thing I want to continue to see from him is clean, playing clean, no interceptions and errors and stuff like that. And he starts off against Hicksville, so not the competition that necessarily he's going to be facing all year, but comes out of that without an interception, 3 passing touchdowns, so he's starting off that ratio very well.
Yeah, but if they can establish a decent running game with Miranda, anytime you have Landon Johnson out there, I mean, he can make something out of nothing.
And I think Patrick Henry, they're going to be dangerous in Division 7. And we talked to Coach I, and I don't believe they play a single Division 7 team on their schedule. So the only caveat they have is Marion Local seems to follow them wherever they go. So,
but they didn't this year. They said, didn't they?
Did he say that? I thought he said they did follow them this year.
Oh, did they?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I was thinking because they didn't.
Marion Local and Patrick Henry, they've both fluttered between D6 and D7 over the last couple of years, but
usually by a kid or two. I mean, that's the unfortunate.
And Marion Local, they just went out and beat Wapakoneta Division 3, a quality division. I believe a Division 3 team, and it's amazing. And Marion Local is by far, always one of the best teams in the state, and by far the best small school.
Just an amazing,
team in the state. So let's look at the next game. This one, Keith had picks. So this is Elmwood at Evergreen. Evergreen actually won this one 31-6, and it was Evergreen. Coach Brock earned his first win at Evergreen, so congratulations to him. A couple key players from Evergreen. Quarterback Hunter Valkolik, he was 16 of 25, 64%, 191 passing yards, 4 passing touchdowns, and only 1 interception, so very efficient. Wide receiver Riley Dunbar, 5 receptions, 87 receiving yards, 2 receiving touchdowns, and Dunbar's going to be hard to stop this year with that 6'5" frame. So what are your guys' thoughts here? Actually, Keith, why don't you kick this one off?
Yeah, like we said, I touched upon a couple notes earlier. Coach Bishop had one of those, kind of like Coach Hale at Antwerp. You got one of those classes that come around once every 2 decades, which is basically what Elmwood lost. Like every one of their skilled position players probably set numerous records last year on the offensive side of the ball, and you lose those kids, it's tough to recover. I mean, it really is. So just looking at the experience, like I said, all those kids graduated from Elmwood. Evergreen, even though Coach Karchner left, and cupboard wasn't bare for them, they had a lot of talent coming back. Just thought that the advantage was Evergreen, and I didn't think it would be that not that that's a lopsided score. I guess 31-6 kind of is, but yeah, congratulations to Coach Bach.
Yeah, I jumped on Keith's bandwagon when he picked Evergreen. I thought that I changed it kind of at the last minute for the exact same reason. After we watched him play at the scrimmage at Sonora and Keith kind of picked Evergreen, I thought, I'm going to switch that. I think that's a possibility because I agreed. I didn't think Elmwood looked as good as they were last year, not even close, and it panned out. But so thanks to Keith for making me follow him on that one.
AJ, do you have any thoughts?
No, not at all. I agree with you. Just kind of watching Elmwood, it was a little, disappointing to see what they were after last year because they were a very solid team last year. So, not surprised that Evergreen won it. I didn't pick them, but I'm not surprised either.
I still think Elmwood has some good athletes.
They do, yes.
And I know we don't cover Elmwood, and they have Micah Oliver back, but very talented. And I think Elmwood will still go on to have a really good season if they can learn from this game and bounce back. So we'll see how both teams go. And I think if you're Evergreen, there's a lot of excitement in that community right now.
Yep.
Looking at the last game here of our slate, Ottawa Glandorf at Eastwood. And this one was actually a close one. Eastwood ended up winning 21-18. OG was winning at half 12-7. And, we kind of talked about before, too, with Ottawa Glandorf, whenever they have a losing season, they usually kind of bounce back. So we're kind of expecting that out of the Titans. Ottawa Glandorf, some key players. Quarterback Peyton Coleman, 19 of 34, 56%, 245 passing yards, 3 passing touchdowns. And wide receiver Grant Schroeder, 9 receptions, 124 receiving yards, and 1 receiving touchdown. So what did you guys think here?
This is one of those games don't really have much to input on. They're teams that I'm not real familiar with, but anytime you can put up 245 yards passing, that's pretty good.
For me, it's like Ottawa Glandorf started out this year like last year. They were in a lot of games, and again, they just come up short. I think they lost 7 or 8 games last year by under 6 or 7 points, if I recall. So, and Eastwood's one of those offenses last year put up probably 40, 45 points a game.
Yeah, so. And Eastwood actually has a new coach this year.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah,
yes.
Because their head coach went over to Anthony Wayne. I think he's the DC over there. Yep. So, but yeah, with Ottawa Glandorf, Coach Ken Schreiner's been there forever. Yep. And, we've talked about all the success he has. And it's just one of those years, this kind of spurts in the school system where you kind of have your ups and your downs. And I think that's where Ottawa Glandorf's at. But I think they're on the uprise here this season. Tony, do you have any comments?
No, I'm good.
OG was your team last year.
I was picking OG a lot.
That's right.
But, yeah.
All right. Well, that concludes our game recaps. Let's go ahead. Let's take a break to hear from our sponsors. 3Chord is a family-owned and operated business who offers the highest quality embroidery, screen printing, sign and promotional items to customers of Northwest Ohio at competitive prices. Locations in Archbold, Napoleon, and Bowling Green. Check them out at 3chord.com. That's THREECORD.com. For any of your auto body or collision needs, be sure to check out Bat & Stevens Body Shop, voted the #1 body shop in Northwest Ohio by Crescent News readers. Give them a call today at 419-497-3111 to schedule your free estimate. Check out Tenora Rams Live. Live events broadcast on YouTube and post-game results, articles, schedules, and more can all be found on tenorarams.com. Feel free to look up their Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram pages as well. Fairchild Family Chiropractic aims to help families to get better together in the least invasive way possible. Dr. Fairchild focuses on the neck using the Blair technique and Palmer package, adjusting to correct spinal misalignments. Located in Defiance, Ohio, call Dr. Fairchild today at 419-576-5070 to schedule an appointment. We're back on the NWO Sports Podcast. We are looking at Player of the Week from Week 1 here. So let's go ahead. We'll break down our list. Each of the guys will kind of talk to someone who they're looking at. And I'll announce who the winner is of Player of the Week from Week 1. So looking at who made the list of some honorable mentions and candidates, looking at Defiance running back Brogan Castillo, Defiance defensive back Garrett Rodenberger, Napoleon wide receiver Trey Rubenstein, quarterback Nash Meyer from Patrick Henry, Houston Miranda running back from Patrick Henry, Landon Johnson wide receiver from Patrick Henry, Carson Altimus from Antwerp, quarterback wide receiver Landon Brewer, Antwerp, quarterback Brylan Parker, Van Wert, wide receiver Connor Campbell from Van Wert, defensive back Gage Steeman from Van Wert, Trey Parsons, quarterback from Wauseon, Taryn Knieven, Ayersville, running back, Cohen Holbert, linebacker, running back from Eden, Scotty Krantz from Edgerton, Hunter Valkulik, Evergreen quarterback, and running back Keldon Bill. So who wants to start with who they're kind of looking at?
I mean, I can start off with my pick is going to be Keldon Bill for the 2 kickoff returns against Bryan. Sounds like he kind of pulled them back into it. It sounds like Bryan was up. Did they take the lead?
Yes.
With that? Yep. And Keldon Bill kind of took the wind right out of their sails, running it right back, and then had a second kickoff return on top of that. So kind of gets the momentum going in Van Werd's favor. So I'm going to go with him.
For me, I could go a couple different directions, but I really like Patrick Henry running back Houston Miranda. He averaged almost 10 yards, 9.6 yards a carry. That's huge. If you can do that, I mean, that's also obviously goes to his offensive line as well. But man, it's you give him the rock. He's getting 10 yards a carry. That's a good feeling.
Absolutely.
Keith, who were you kind of looking at?
Colin Halbert of Eden, like we said, saw the video with his play there down on the goal line for Eden when Edgerton was driving, and offensively scored 2 touchdowns, had 32 yards rushing on just 5 carries. So I expect big things this year from Cohen.
Yeah, and after some discussion, we kind of discussed off air who we want to go with, and I think this kid that we're going to go with tonight, we watched him play in person. Really tore things up. He was all over the field, defensively making plays. And we said, it may not show up on the stat book of stats, but man, did he really make a difference in the game. And we're going to go with Defiance defensive back Garrett Rodenberger. He had 1 interception, huge interception that kind of turned the tides of the game. He played lockdown defense, and he had a few huge hits. And like I said earlier in the podcast, we'll attach those. But man, he really played hard, and I like the way he was just a ball hawk all over the field, and he really made a difference in that Defiance Napoleon game. So Defiance defensive back Garrett Rodenberger is our Week 1 NWO Sports Player of the Week, and we're still kind of working out awards. Actually, we're in the process with BSN Sports as a sponsor, but hopefully we can get some NWO Sports gear sent to them courtesy of BSN Sports. So that will be upcoming. If not, we'll definitely get some plaques or something like we did last year. So
like Garrett was waiting for this game all summer long.
Yes. You could see the raw emotion from him too.
Absolutely.
And it was awesome to see him get excited for every single play and every single hit that he had. So very good performance from Garrett Rodenberger. All right, so we know Tony's going to roast me on this one. So power rankings for Week 2. And I know the first week was kind of a mess, but this one we got things straightened out. I'll go ahead and I'll announce the picks now that we got everything organized, and these guys will kind of tell me their thoughts. So let's start.
At least you think you have it fixed.
I don't know. We'll see. Let's just start. It's some good conversation between us. So let's go. Pick number 25. We coming in at number 25 is Swanton. 24 Hilltop, 23 Fairview, 22 Hicksville, 21 Delta, and 20 Montpelier. Thoughts on this?
I think I'm good there.
Yeah, it's pretty accurate. I mean, hopefully we can see Fairview move up a couple spots next week at this time.
All right. Looking at number 19, Paulding, 18 North Central, 17 Edgerton, 16 Evergreen, 15 Ottawa Glandorf, and we'll leave it at that.
Like I said, Logan, I'm going to pick on you a little bit. Paulding wins the first game the first game of the season for the first time in 3 years, and you drop them a position.
Good point. My thinking.
Come on, where's the love?
My thinking there. After all that being said, it was Swanton.
Right.
I mean, nothing personal against Swanton, but they've struggled to win ball games. And,
right.
And if Paulding really wants to make a jump up this ladder, let's see some wins against some GMC foes. I think they play Spencerville this week.
Yep.
If they beat Spencerville this week, we'll see what kind of team Paulding is.
Yeah, Spencerville is a quality team.
Let's go ahead. Let's look at number 14, Napoleon, number 13, Eden, number 12, Tenora, number 11, Ayersville.
Pretty accurate. Ayersville has a chance to jump up a couple spots next week, where unfortunately for us green and whites, we're probably going to fall a couple spots next week.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Keith.
AJ, you have any thoughts?
I was just kind of looking. I agree with you on Tenora. Maybe might be dropping a little bit more. Napoleon, they kind of fit right. I think they fit right there pretty well. Their first half against Defiance was pretty good, and the second half was kind of rough. So they're about the middle of the road.
Yep.
I'm kind of curious where Ayersville is going to go from here.
All right, let's look at the top 10. Breaking the top 10, we have Wayne Trace coming in at number 10, number 9, Bryan, number 8, Columbus Grove, number 7, Wauseon, number 6, Patrick Henry.
Tell you what, Wayne Trace could make a big jump this week. They pull off that upset against PH.
PH on the schedule, yep.
Yeah. Yeah, and then again, another one I'm going to pick on you about, Logan, is Columbus Grove moving up a spot after losing a game. And I really thought maybe Wayne Trace would be up above those guys. But
And that goes again to my thoughts looking at that Fort Recovery. I believe only won one game last season, so I got to back it up.
all right.
We'll see. Again,
It'll play its way out.
It will. They'll work themselves out by the end of the year. So let's look at the top 5 here. Coming in at number 5 is Archbold. Number 4, Defiance. Number 3, Antwerp. Number 2, Liberty Center. And number 1, Van Wert. So thoughts here on the top 5.
My only thing is, I'm not so sure that maybe Antwerp should be number 1. I mean, they played very, very well. Again, level of opponent. I get that. So I see why you moved Van Wert to 1. I definitely don't think Liberty Center, the way they played against Sonora, at least with the first half, deserves that number 1 ranking. So I think you sliding them down was good. I just wasn't expecting the flop there with moving Van Wert away to 1. But hey, I'm game with that.
Yeah, I don't have any insight with Liberty Center whatsoever, but I guarantee you Coach Mueller probably had a very rough week of practice this week because Liberty Center did not look crisp on the offensive side of the ball at all in the first half.
I'm
and
sure
special teams as well.
Yeah, I'm sure you're working on those snaps right now because, like you guys said, that seemed like they were having a lot of trouble with that quarterback center exchange, and they got to get that cleaned up. That way they can run their offense how they want to run it and not how they have to just to get by. So
there's no doubt in my mind. I think Liberty Center fixes that. It's not like it's like a do or die situation.
Right.
And first year starting quarterback back there, and I think Liberty Center will be just fine. They'll kind of work the things out.
Yep.
So, all right. Well, that concludes our power rankings. Let's go ahead. We're going to take another quick break to hear from our sponsors.
Crystal Vasquez of Amerimaid Realty is a top real estate agent in Northwest Ohio. Crystal's compassion and enthusiasm allow her to find that special property or house just for you. Located in Bryan, Ohio, give her a call today at 419-799-1243. Jimenez Basketball Academy strives to create an atmosphere to cultivate basketball fundamentals in Northwest Ohio youth athletes, offering one-on-one sessions, group sessions, speed and agility training, and much more. Located in Pettisville, Ohio, call Coach Jesse today at 419-551-8105. The Drop Zone Pizzeria is the #1 voted pizza restaurant in the region. Check them out for pizza, wings, subs, and more. Located in Ayersville and Stryker, or ask them about their traveling food trailer. Optimal Performance Fitness is your go-to gym in Northwest Ohio, providing group fitness classes, personal training, and sports performance sessions for area athletes. Located in Napoleon, Ohio, give them a call today at 419-438-7265.
We're back on the NWO Sports Podcast, and we are on to the hot takes. So again, the hot takes is where fans can submit different kind of controversial topics or things that they want us to discuss here on the show. And we got a few of them here today, and we're going to kind of see where that takes us. So let's start off with the first one that was sent in. Liberty Benton beats Columbus Grove by more than 2 touchdowns. So I know we kind of discussed this a little bit. I know Liberty Benton's, they've got a lot of athletes. They got a couple really good, they got a good quarterback and some good wide receivers. So I don't know. I think this game is going to play a huge role in how Columbus Grove's season turns out. If they come into this game and they go out and compete, I think they'll be all right. They lost their rivalry game in week 1 to Pandora Gilboa. But I don't know. I may have to agree with this one. I know Liberty Benton's pretty good, and I could see them winning by more than 2 touchdowns.
I guess we'll wait and see. I think Columbus Grove personally is going to bounce back. I think if they win, it's not going to be by more than 2 touchdowns. So I'm against this one.
I would say maybe 2 scores, maybe not 2 touchdowns. It might be like a field goal added in there, 2-point conversion. I would say maybe 2 scores. I don't know that I would say 2 touchdowns necessarily.
Well, I don't know, AJ. No one seems to use kickers anymore.
We saw that.
Yeah.
Like, what in the world?
You're right. So who knows? Maybe it would be.
Saw a bunch of those scores. Like the one was 12 to whatever it was. I was like, geez, obviously didn't kick there.
Yeah.
I think Coach Schaefer will have everybody ready to go. 2 touchdowns. Boy, I just don't see Columbus Grove losing by 14 points.
Yeah, I don't know. I could see it play out one way or the other, but I don't know. I just know Liberty Benton, they're going to be a tough team this season. So I hope, obviously, we want Columbus Grove to win. They're a local team that we cover, so hopefully they can pull that one off. But I don't know. I think Liberty Benton might have them by 2 touchdowns in this game. Let's look at the next hot take here, and this one's looking at the GMC. All 3 Paulding County teams placed top 3 in the GMC for this year, and that includes Paulding, Antwerp, and Wayne Trace. So I thought this, we talked about Wayne Trace and Paulding kind of, playing the upsetter of the GMC, and both teams I think are going to see some improvement. So, but for all 3, that means that they'd have to get past Tenora and Ayersville, and even Edgerton, that's been at the top of the league too. So, what are you guys thinking on this one?
For me personally, 2 of the 3 is a possibility. Now, if Paulding were to sneak in there, I mean, that's great for that program. I just don't see them getting by Tenora or Ayersville, or, I mean, I just don't see that happening.
I'm right there with you, Keith. I see them competing for, somewhere in the mid to upper area of the GMC, but I don't know if they pull number 3. Yeah, they could. We'll see what happens with them.
I was going to fire off with the Paulding people, but I'll be nice. I was like, hey, you guys won your first note. Slow down.
Hey, last time you fired off against a team, you kind of ate your words.
Yeah, I know. I fired off against Defiance and said the only way they're going to host a playoff games would be Division 7 or something, and they almost hosted a playoff game. So, hey, maybe I should fire off against Paulding. It'd be good luck for them. But no, I agree with you guys. I don't know. I mean, it's anything's possible. I mean, you look at Sonora right now. They got to stay healthy. Obviously, if they keep staying banged up the way it is right now, I mean, I'm not going to write them off, but it's going to be tough for them to compete. So, I mean, very easily, if we'll see how Paulding progresses here.
Yeah, and
I think Wayne Trace is going to do well, but we'll see how Paulding.
Yeah, I was going to say definitely Antwerp and Wayne Trace I could see being up there, but I think Paulding's the one that has a question mark to see. Is week 1 is that a fluke, or are they going to do something with it coming up? Because their schedule only gets harder from here. So. I thought that was a pretty good one. So we'll see how the season goes. Let's look at the next one. For all you Wauseon fans out there, a couple of them here, we're going to kind of tie in together. Wauseon can run the ball, and Wauseon was a fluke. It was Fairview. Come on. So someone was taking some stabs at Wauseon, but we did see, Wauseon ran the ball pretty well. I'm trying to think. Austin Kovar had 3 rushing touchdowns. They had, I believe, a couple hundred rushing yards as well, which historically we've seen over the last few years. Wauseon's going to sling the ball all around the field and try to get it in their athletes' hands. So, what do you guys think on this one?
Well, I don't know on the running one. I'm not sure what the overall stats were, but I just went back and picked it up real quick. They only rushed for 134 yards against Fairview. So kind of leading into the next one, it's Fairview. Again, slow down. It's they can run the ball, but you ran against Fairview. Let's see what happens as you start getting into the meat of the schedule. Let's see if you guys run the ball against Liberty Center, then come talk to me. All right,
that would be a test.
Sure. I'm not being disrespectful, but if you're going to run the ball, if you run the ball against Liberty Center, then okay.
Or Archbold or Patrick Henry or some of the other teams at top of the NWAL. I think if you do that, then you have a legitimate running offense. So.
Right. And I don't think Wauseon was a fluke. I mean, as far as winning the game, I think Wauseon definitely got talent. I don't think it's only because it was Fairview, but when it comes to running the ball, I think it's just Fairview.
I mean, putting up 49 points in the first half, you had to have been executing things correctly to be able to do that. And that's what it comes down to. When you're playing those teams, like, when you're going up against Fairview or lesser teams, you stop looking at what the score is and you start looking at how did things look as far as fundamentals and that kind of stuff. So, it may have just been Fairview, but that doesn't mean anything if they were executing everything very cleanly and working on getting better for the next week. It could be a great start to a very phenomenal season for Wauseon.
And something important to note, Wauseon over the last couple of years has always had a trio. They had Jude Armstrong, they had Sam Smith, and they had Tyson Rodriguez, who was the younger one of the 3. They don't really have those 3 threats anymore, so they're going to have to run the ball because a lot of these teams are going to come out and they're going to either bracket or they're going to double cover Tyson Rodriguez because he's their number 1 threat, and Wauseon loves to throw the ball. So what do? You take away their top wide receiver, and Wauseon's going to have to respond, and they're going to have to run the ball a little bit this year. So
Coach Moore wants to run the ball, I would assume. So and Trey Parsons isn't really a running quarterback. So
no, and I think the running offense will really complement Trey Parsons. We saw him kind of grow into his own. He kind of took over things midway through the season last year. So I think Guasion, I think they'll be a quality team, but again, it's going to be tough to see where they kind of fill out in the NWAL. That's always a gauntlet every single year. So, all right, let's move on. Last hot take here. Eden keeps it within 2 touchdowns of Antwerp. Who wants to start?
I don't know.
Yeah.
this could be a high-scoring game. Even last year it was a high-scoring game, and I think Antwerp won by 20-plus points. So I don't think Eden can keep it within 3 touchdowns, let alone 2.
Yeah, most teams that we talk about, you kind of say like new year, new season, new team kind of thing. But with Antwerp, it's not really the case. They've got just about everybody back. They only lost a couple people, so you can rely on what happened last year a little bit. Antwerp's going to come out and smack Eden around a little bit. It's just going to depend on how Eden responds to that as to where they end up.
Yeah, I just, but I don't know. I just don't see him keeping it within 2 touchdowns. But I guess my better question would be, what's the over/under?
Yeah,
I would set that probably at around the 62 mark or something crazy.
I would 72.
I would probably take the over if it was 62. I would probably even borderline take it if it was 72. So I don't know. I think it depends on how that game starts off. If Antwerp gets up early, they're gonna obviously yank their starters in the second half because they don't want any injuries. But I don't know. I don't think Eden can. I don't think they just have enough firepower to hold up with Antwerp. We saw Antwerp. They had a really good run last year, and basically it's just a repeat season of what they had last season. So we know they're pretty much. I'm imagining if you're Coach Hale, your goal is at least state semifinalist, state champ, like minimal. You bring back everyone. There's no doubt in your mind, and I believe. Are they still Division 7? I'm trying to think.
I believe so.
Division 7. Your goal is to get to state semifinal and play Marion local, one or the other way. So I think that's what their goal is. And like you said, Tony, too, I think Antwerp's just going to kind of run away in the sunset this year with their regular season. So
it's one of the things that Coach Hale's going to have to keep them in check. That's not let them get ahead of themselves.
Very good point.
Let's just play it.
Absolutely.
Take it slow and let's take one game at a time.
Yep. I like that point a lot because there's teams that have had lots of talent, and we've seen that at all levels, college, pro, whatever. They get big heads and they just kind of, they don't take care of business and they end up not having the season they want. So as long as they take it game by game and they're pretty level headed, they don't get too high with the highs, they don't get too low with the lows, and they kind of ride right in the middle. I think Antwerp will be in good shape for the rest of the year. So. Okay, so that was our hot takes. Again, if you guys have any, I put out there on social media. Usually it's on Instagram, but submit your hot takes. If you have any good ones, let us know. We love hearing from them. So it really sparks some good conversation for us. Let's move on to the next one. And this is a new segment that we added, and it's Matthew's breakout players for week number 2. And again, he was dead on with some of the players last week. So again, I'm excited to see what he has for this week. So let's look at the offensive side of the ball. And he is going with wide receiver Abe Delano from Ayersville. Reason being is Delphus St. John's, which was Delphus Jefferson's opponent last week, was able to throw the ball effectively on Jefferson. And I would expect Ayersville to target a guy like Delano a lot this week and take advantage of the holes in the Jefferson defense. Now there is one caveat. I think Ayersville's identity is running the ball. So I don't know how they get it to him. I could definitely see him, we talked about going forward, getting him involved in the offense a little bit more. So maybe instead of, seeing at wide receiver, we see him in the backfield with some more carries. So I think that's definitely plausible. For the defensive side of the ball, he's going with Landon Bockelman from Liberty Center. Reason being, and I really like this one a lot, I think he's going to hit this one on the money. Reasoning is Defiance was able to go through Napoleon offensive and defensive lines last week and apply lots of pressure with Bockelman being on a whole different level. I expect him to be a huge issue for Napoleon, and we really saw that in the second half. And I think Defiance had a handful of sacks and pressures on Napoleon's quarterback. So I think he could definitely be a huge playmaker in that game. And I think Matthew had 2 quality players selected for this week. So that's awesome. And we'll keep on doing that as well as he continues to help out with NWO Sports.
Yeah, does a great job.
So let's go ahead and take a break from our sponsors.
Northwest Ohio Basketball hosts premier basketball tournaments for boys in grades 3 to 8 in the area. Upcoming tournaments are right around the corner. Give them a call today at 419-283-5296 or check out their website at nwoball.com. The Thunderdome is your local indoor softball and baseball facility offering private lessons, turf infield, batting cages, and pitching machine rentals, even offering a golf simulator. Located in Archbold, Ohio. Give them a call today at 419-906-3643. Nicely Rentals and Storage is your go-to venue for graduation parties, birthdays, weddings, and more. Also offering vehicle storage, table and chair rentals, and U-Haul equipment. Located in Ayersville, Ohio. Give them a call today at 419-439-6177.
And we're back on the NWO Sports Podcast. Last little bits here. Looking at week 2 game predictions. So we're going to run through and see, who has what picked for this week. So let's kick things off. First game here is St. Henry 1-0 at Archbold 1-0. Looking at this, I think I'm going to go Archbold. Archbold looked really good in week 1 against Genoa. It's at Archbold. That's always a tough place to win. So I'm going the Blue Streaks.
That's a really nice game to watch, actually. But I'm taking the Streaks.
Blue Streaks.
Streaks for me.
Bryce had Archbold and Matthew had St. Henry. Let's look at the next game here. Brian 0-1 at Maumee 1-0. And I think this one, could possibly be a good one.
Yeah.
Coach Karchner over at Maumee got their first win in, 3 years?
Yep.
So definitely some hype around them. Brian and Coach Redhead, I think they're going to bounce back this week, so I'm going the Golden Bears.
Yep, taking Coach Redhead and the Bears.
Yeah, Brian suffered that loss to Van Wert, but Van Wert's a very solid program, so can't hold that against Brian in it by any means. So I'm going to go with Brian.
I'm going with Brian as well.
And Bryce and Matthew both had Brian, so Brian across the board. Next game, Delta at Fairview. And again, I think this one, Fairview, I think they're competitive in this game. I just don't know that they get it done. So I'm going Delta on this one.
Yeah, I took Delta. This is one of those games like your heart kind of pulls for Fairview and Coach Rakes because, as we said, it's one of those building block games for the future. But I put Delta down. I wouldn't be surprised if Fairview won.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Delta.
I was sitting here thinking about that. I'm thinking,
you gonna change your mind?
I might.
I thought the same thing.
I just have this funny feeling that they're going to pull this off. I mean, Delta, to me didn't play well in the first week, and maybe graduation hit them harder than I think. And
what's it going to be?
I'll stay with Delta.
All right. Bryce had Delta and Matthew had Delta, so Delta across the board from everyone. Ottawa Hills 1-0 at Evergreen 1-0. Another interesting game. Evergreen's coming off a big week 1 win against Elmwood, and I think this is a test to see how good Evergreen truly is. We know Ottawa Hills has historically been good the last few years. It's at Evergreen too, so home field advantage for the Vikings, but I think Ottawa Hills gets it done in this one, so I'm going Ottawa Hills.
Yeah, I think Ottawa Hills just too strong for Evergreen. Be a great win though for Evergreen, but taking Ottawa Hills, taking the Green Bears.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm going just with the home field advantage there with Evergreen coming off a big win last week and the home field advantage coming into this week. I'm going to go with Evergreen.
And I'm going with Evergreen as well.
Bryce is going Evergreen, so the Fairchilds and Bryce are going on the Evergreen bandwagon. Matthew had Ottawa Hills, so we're split on that one. Liberty Center 1-0 at Napoleon 0-1. We kind of discussed this earlier. I think Liberty Center takes care of Napoleon. I think they really straighten up all the fumbles and kind of sloppy play that we saw in the first half, and I think they take care of business at Napoleon. Unless Napoleon can get the ball in Trey Rubenstein's hands quite a bit, because he was the only one I really saw a lot of spark from.
Now, I know we've already went through the game reviews, but one stat that stood out to me, which we talked about off air, was Napoleon had 30 rushes for -6 yards.
Oh yeah,
that is a stat that's absolutely amazing. It really was. But game wise, I took Coach Mueller and Liberty Center.
Yeah, I don't think there's even a question here. I think Liberty Center is going to take it. The big thing for LC is going to be, I think this is a very important game as far as their development goes. They can really use this game to focus on correcting things, making sure they're very crisp, getting ready for NWOAL play here in a couple weeks. This isn't a game they should just kind of take lightly. They really need to work on some things and crispen up. So I'm going with Liberty Center.
Tigers.
Bryce had Liberty Center, and Matthew had Liberty Center as well. Let's look at the next game. Wayne Trace 1-0 at Patrick Henry 1-0. I think this is a game, if Wayne Trace wants to show what they're going to be this season, they need to take it. But at the same time, I think Coach I has got the boys over and Patrick Henry right, and I'm going the Patriots.
This is a heck of a game. I took the Pats.
Yeah, I'm going with Patrick Henry here.
Yeah, PH for me. I agree with you a little bit, Logan. Wayne Trace needs to win this game to kind of prove that they're somebody to contend with. But I just think Coach I's got it going on, and again, it's at home field, so PH.
Bryce had Patrick Henry, Matthew had Patrick Henry, so Patrick Henry from all of us. Next game, Hicksville 0-1 at Swanton 0-1. Definitely a winnable game for either side.
Yep.
And both programs really need a win in this situation, but I think Hicksville's going to pull this one out.
This is a rough one. I took Swanton.
Yeah, I think this one I just kind of went with the home team on this one. I'm going to go with Swanton.
That's what I did. I took home field advantage.
Yeah.
That's what I did.
Bryce had Hicksville and Matthew had Hicksville, so we're split even down the line on that one. Next game, Wauseon 1-0 at Bellevue 0-1. And I think I like what I saw out of the Indians in week 1. I know they played Fairview, but I think they're going to come out this week and then they're going to do some good things. And I think we really see how good that Wauseon running attack is. So I'm going the Indians.
Yep. Taking the Tribe.
Yeah, Indians for me.
Wauseon for me too.
Bryce had Wauseon and Matthew had Bellevue, so he was the only one that picked against Wauseon. Next game, Antwerp 1-0 at Eden 1-0. We discussed this a little bit earlier in the hot takes, but I think Antwerp's got too much firepower. I know it's at Eden, but again, I think this one, I think Antwerp's got it under control at halftime. I'm going Antwerp.
Archers
for me.
Antwerp for me.
Bryce had Antwerp and Matthew had Antwerp. Next game, Ayersville 1-0 at Delphus Jefferson 0-1. And I believe Delphus Jefferson was the one that upset them in the playoffs because Ayersville took this battle earlier in the season. But I think Ayersville gets redemption. That running attack looked really good last week. Their offensive and defensive lines are really clicking. I think the Pilots come out and they take this one. I'm going Ayersville.
I took DJ.
Delphus Jefferson.
I'm with Logan. I think Ayersville's going to pull this out.
And Bryce had Ayersville and Matthew had Ayersville. Next game, Edgerton at 0-1 at Hilltop 0-1. Again, we know Hilltop's kind of struggled in the past. They got their first win in quite some time last season. The game with Edgerton against Eden was close and actually came down to the line. I think Edgerton takes care of business, and I'm going the Bulldogs on this one.
We talked about earlier, is there such thing as a quality loss? To me, this Edgerton loss to Eden actually was a quality loss. Taking Coach Flagel and the Dogs.
Bulldogs.
Edgerton for me.
Bryce and Matthew both had Edgerton as well, so Edgerton from all of us. Next game, Paulding 1-0 at Spencerville 1-0. Again, this is another game we've talked about. Teams need to win to really kind of prove themselves, and I think I'm right in the Paulding Panthers bandwagon, and I'm going Paulding on this one. Choo-choo.
Taking Spencerville.
I'm really excited to see where Paulding goes this year, so I'm going to go with Paulding. I'm riding that bandwagon train too.
Yeah, I jumped on it. Let's rock.
Bryce is joining us too, but Matthew, he's going against. He's going Spencerville. Next game, Tenora 0-1 at Otsego 0-1. Both teams coming in with one loss. And, we know going into this game, Tenora's got some injuries. They're kind of banged up. But I'd really like to see Tenora establish the run game this week and make some quality throws. Not necessarily the deep ball, but hit those underneath routes and try to really develop things. On the flip side, Otsego, they're always a quality team. I think it's going to be tough. Going to the Castle is where they're playing at. So it's definitely a tough place to win. So I'm going the Black, or what are they?
Knights.
The Knights, that's right. Yeah, I'm going Otsego.
Yeah, it's going to be a steamy, hot Friday night. So
yeah, no kidding.
Taking the Knights.
Hope we're not on the roof.
Put us in some AC.
I'm right there with you, Logan, with the injuries, and Otsego's a good team anyway. So I'm going to go with Otsego.
Yeah, guys, I love the Rams, but I gotta be unbiased here, and I just think that with the injuries that Tenora has, I don't think Tenora can pull this one off this week against Otsego. So I'm going with Otsego.
And Bryce had Otsego, and Matthew had Otsego as well. Next game, Liberty Benton 1-0 at Columbus Grove 0-1. We kind of talked about this a little bit ago. I think Liberty Benton, they've got a lot of quality athletes returning this year. I don't know. I think they do. I think they win this by a couple scores, but we'll see. It wouldn't surprise me if Columbus Grove pulls this off, but I think Liberty Benton's going to take this one with a win.
LB, Liberty Benton.
I'm going with Liberty Benton.
I'm taking Columbus Grove on the bounce back from last week's loss. I think they're going to be playing at home. They're going to be a little bit more amped up, and I think they might be able to pull this one out.
And we know Columbus Grove is a hard place to win at.
Yeah.
Keith and I years ago we were over at Columbus Grove
facility.
Yes, and it's a tough environment to win at.
Like an old school, like Liberty Center before the turf. Like, yes,
yeah, it's a tough place to win. So Bryce had Liberty Benton and Matthew had Liberty Benton as well. Next game, Wapakoneta 0-1 at Defiance 1-0, and this is going to be our NWO Sports Game of the Week. Again, we know Wapakoneta's coming off a tough loss to Marion Local, and Marion Local just beats up on everyone. And Wapakoneta's, they're a very good football team as well, and a bigger school, but this will be good. There will be a lot of people at this one. I know it. Defiance had a really good game against Napoleon, but I think Wapakoneta's another beast, and I'm going Wapakoneta.
Yeah, I think if you're Coach Cooper, this is one of those games you kind of look forward to just to see where your team is at for the rest of the season. Taking Wopak.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Wapak here, but I think if Defiance can pull a win out here, it can really set the stage for a very successful season going forward. So I know this Wapak last year was kind of a deciding factor on where they placed, whether it was home field or away field for that first round.
For me, boys, I'm taking the Bulldogs. I was pretty impressed with watching them last week, and there were some drop passes, quite a few drop passes there that I think would have handled that game a lot differently. So I think they're going to correct that this week. They're going to get some stickier gloves or whatever they need. But I think Defiance is going to pull this off.
Looking at things too, if you see Defiance coming out and they play second half Defiance football,
yeah,
I think they have a chance. If you see first half Defiance football, I think they're in for a rough night.
Yep.
So depends what team we get. Bryce went Defiance and Matthew went Wapakoneta, so we're split on that one. Next game, Ottawa Glandorf 0-1 at Kenton 0-1. I think OG bounces back this week. I think Coach Schreiner's going to get them right. And, Ottawa Glandorf was in the game last week with Eastwood, and I think they pull it out and get their first win of the season.
I take OG.
OG.
I went Kenton.
Bryce had OG. And Matthew had Ottawa Glandorf as well. So Tony's trying to obviously make up on some picks here.
I think so. Mock brothers are coming back.
Mock brothers. They're going to come back and make a guest appearance.
Let's look at the next game. Lima Bath 1-0 at Van Wert 1-0. And Lima Bath is actually coming off defeating the reigning division, was it 7?
7, I believe. Yes.
State champs in New Bremen, which Bath was given minimal chance to win that game. So could be interesting, but again, Van Wert's got a lot of talent. Brylan Parker. AJ, who was your player? I'm trying to think. The kid that had all the kickoff returns.
Keldon.
Yeah.
Keldon Bill.
A lot of good athletes coming into the game, and it's going to be the first game of the season that Van Wert's at home, so they get to play on that beautiful new facility and turf. So I think Van Wert takes this one fairly easily.
Yep, I took Cougars.
Van Wert.
Van Wert for me.
Bryce had Van Wert, and Matthew had Van Wert as well. A couple more games here. Parkway 0-1 at North Central 1-0. I believe last year Parkway took this game too, and it's just a different kind of football once you go south. And I want to cheer on, and I want North Central to win, but I think Parkway's still going to be a little too much. I think North Central's still got to kind of develop as a program to win those big and those tough games. So I'm going Parkway.
Anytime you take a team from the MAC, I mean, like you said, Logan, that's a whole different ball game.
It doesn't matter if you're the best of the best of the MAC or you're the worst of the MAC. It's still, you're part of the MAC, which is one of the best conferences in the state, if not the best.
Probably the best. Parkway.
Parkway.
I went North Central. I think North Central Parkway. That's a long drive for Parkway. I think North Central's going to pull this off.
Bryce went North Central and Matthew went Parkway. Woodmore 0-1 at Montpelier 0-1. I think Montpelier's going to pull this one off. I like what they're really doing over there, and I think they're on the upcoming. They've got some nice athletes, so I'm going the Locomotives on this one.
Yeah, pulling for Coach Robinson, taking Montpelier.
Montpelier.
Montpelier for me.
Bryce had Montpelier and Matthew had Montpelier. So Montpelier across the board. This week, guys, 8-man football is starting, and we have Stryker at North Adams Jerome. And, we've got, I know it doesn't get covered as much, but we try to cover it a little bit here. Stryker was 6-4 last year. North Adams Jerome was 1-8. And I think Stryker is going to take this one.
Taking the Stryker Panthers.
Stryker
for me.
Stryker from Bryce and Matthew as well. Last game here, St. Mary Central Catholic at Holgate 8-3. We know Holgate is the reigning Northern 8 conference champs, and I think they do big things, and they're going to start off this year with a win. So I'm going Holgate.
Taking the Tigers.
Yeah, I'm excited to see Holgate continue to build that little program they've got going on there. So Holgate
for me.
And Bryce and Matthew both had Holgate as well. Well, guys, that's week number 2. We're just going to keep on moving along with these podcasts. So it's crazy how quick the season really flies by. So closing thoughts.
I just loved week 1 was exciting. Like I said, getting to go watch Defiance Napoleon play, and then watched the very exciting game, at least in the first half at Sonora, between Sonora and Liberty Center. And then hopefully there's more of that to come this week. And just like you said, it goes by so fast that you got to kind of, to pull the old Ferris Bueller thing out, you got to stop and look around once in a while. Before you know it, it's gone. So
right.
that goes for the athletes. Keep that in mind. It goes so fast. Yep. Before you know it, you're a senior and you're graduating. So make the most of the time you have on the field, because you'll never get it back.
Yes, so. as everybody here knows. For me, which we stressed a couple of times last year, if you have a son or a daughter, just take them to a game. I mean, your daughter, they're going to be fixed on the cheerleaders down there. Going to someday grow up, hey, I want to be like so-and-so, because, to them, that's their idol that they could possibly see getting off the bus. Where you're in elementary, they go to high school, and, they look up to those people. On the other side, if you have a son, they're going to be eyes on the field more than likely, and, they're going to take your family out, they'll fall in love with high school football, which we all, obviously, that's what we do because we fell in love with it. So, take your kids out this week, next week, and just let them enjoy the atmosphere of a high school football game all around. Band, cheerleaders, everything. It's a great time, and it's inexpensive. So.
And my closing thought is hydrate, because it's going to be a scorcher all week long. And hydration starts now, right away.
Yes.
Don't wait last minute, because I can tell you from personal experience, I played in some hot games in high school. I played in even hotter games in college. We went out to Kansas City, and it was like 105 heat index, and the turf only magnifies it. So, and it takes a whole nother mindset to play in the heat with all the pads and the jersey on. And granted, I mean, the games are later. They're night games at 7 p.m., but it's still going to be warm out. And if you want to give yourself the best chance to go out there and perform and for your team to win, it starts with hydration and proper eating. So that's the biggest tip I can give the kids for closing thoughts.
Some bananas and pickle juice.
Whatever you want to drink. But start now. So anyways, hopefully, Friday night, obviously we'll be at the Tenora, not Seago game, but hopefully it's not too hot if we're in the box or whatever, wherever we're at. So I guess we'll find out once we get there. So
hopefully we're not in the hot box.
Right.
We'll be.
All right. Well, we would like to thank all of our sponsors: 3Chord, Bat & Stevens Body Shop, Tenora Rams Live, Jimenez Basketball Academy, Fairchild Family Chiropractic, NWO Basketball, The Drop Zone Pizzeria, Crystal Vasquez of Amerimaid Realty, Optimal Performance Fitness, Nicely Storage and Rentals, and the Thunderdome. We'd also like to give a special shout out to Jeff Batt for allowing us again to use his amazing new facility here at Bat & Stevens Body Shop in beautiful downtown Jewel, Ohio. But anyways, stay tuned for the next NWO Sports Podcast in the near future, and thanks for watching.